We're recording the interview of Michelle Dixon. This interview is being conducted by Ericka Carter from the Wright State University Veterans Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Wright State University in the New Media Incubator. It is 6:30 p.m. on February 26, 2020. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
I am doing fantastic.
Good.
It's a little chilly outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome to Ohio.
You.
Might be spring tomorrow. Welcome to Ohio.
Oh, okay. We'll just keep all the clothes out all year long, right? Summer,
Absolutely.
winter, fall.
Just, you know, I've learned to adjust.
Where and when were you born?
I was born in Columbus, Ohio in 1961. I was born in a home for unwed mothers because I was adopted at 3 months old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're used to this weather. You've just been through it your whole life.
I am. With the exception of the 6 years I was in Arizona, I've been in Ohio.
Okay, so you were adopted.
I was.
And to your permanent forever home right then and there?
Mm-hmm. I was adopted at 3 months old.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, my parents, their plan was to go and pick out a boy baby, and they walked into the home. And I was over in the corner in the crib, playing with my feet, blowing bubbles, and giggling to myself. And my mom took one look at me, and there you have it. My dad's like, okay, if you just have to have her. So I've always teased him. I said, my story is you pick me out like you pick a puppy out. But that's what happened.
Okay, so who were your parents and what were their occupations?
My parents were Ernest, nicknamed Butch Hudson, and Betty L. Harding Hudson. My father was a steam fitter. He worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for 37 and a half years. My mother was a housewife.
Steam footer?
Steam fitter.
Fitter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little newer school. Can you tell me what a steam
Kind of like
fitter?
a plumber, but he worked like the old houses, like in Page Manor and places like that. They had the steam heat with the baseboard heats and everything like that, and he worked on those.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that for
That's
me.
a trade he got in the Navy.
Oh, so he was in the service
Yes,
too.
my father was in the Navy.
Okay. Do you think that impacted you at all growing up?
Not really.
How
I mean,
long-
I knew he was in the Navy. I decided to go to the military when I was a senior in high school. I didn't know what else that I wanted to do, and I wasn't really sure if college was what I wanted to do. So I joined the military. You know, I came from a working class family, so we were always told at 18 years old, you got to make a move. You're either going to the service, you're going to get a job, or you're going to school. So I went to the military.
Okay. Did you have any other siblings?
No, I'm an only child.
Okay.
Now, I have found my birth family. I found them later on in life, and I'm one of 6. And I'm the second oldest, but growing up, I was an only child.
Okay.
Yeah.
To the Hudsons.
To the Hudsons, yes.
All right. Now, so when was Dad in the Navy, and did he choose to go?
Oh, my dad was in the Navy in the early 40s, I guess I want to say. He was during the Korean War. He was during the Korean War, because I have a picture of the ship that he served on and his ribbons. Yeah, so he was in just for one tour, had 90 days before he had to make a decision whether he was going to go back or not, and Wright-Pat called him. So when he got called to Wright-Pat, and that's where he stayed.
He got called to work as a civilian?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good choice.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, 37 and a half years.
Okay.
So I don't think he regretted that choice at all. Yeah.
And was he drafted or no?
I think my dad might have been drafted. I have to look at the records. He may have been.
Okay, that's fine. We're here to talk about you. I just want to know a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you were in high school, did you have any particular side activities? Were you athletic, speech and debate, anything like that?
Yeah, my focus was I was going to go to college. So I took all college prep courses, 4 years of Latin, because I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And this is what I was going to do. But and I was an athlete. Kind of hard to see that now, but I was an athlete. I played volleyball for 4 years. I played softball for 4 years, all area. And I was a scholar athlete, so I had to keep my GPA up. and I have awards for that. And yeah, and actually, things were different when because I graduated in 1979. So there was not as much emphasis now on preparing high school students for college and different things like that. You had a counselor, you seen them, and they either told you, well, you maybe want to go to college, or maybe you need to go to trade school or whatever. I had scholarships. I had a partial scholarship to Morehouse College in Kentucky. I had a partial scholarship to Ohio University in Athens. The one for Athens was for volleyball. The one for Morehouse was for softball. My parents took me to visit Athens in Ohio University, and my mom seen how it was, because it's kind of a party school, it's down there. And she's like, well, you have to come on every weekend. I'm like, oh no, I'm going to the military. And that's what solidified my decision to go to the military. Small town girl, wanted to see something different, and so that's why I joined the military.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So how soon, once school was out, did you leave?
I graduated in May. I was set to leave in June. And my father's like, don't leave so soon, your mom can't handle it. So I delayed going until October, but then I went and stayed with my grandmother in Cincinnati until it was time for me to go. My mom was very strict, and I had to be home by 11 and this and that and the other, and I just wanted to spread my wings, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, why did you choose that branch?
Well, I didn't. I originally was going to the Army. My father told me, if you're going to the military, you can go to the Navy, the Coast Guard, or the Air Force. Other than that, if you can't do that, then you can't go.
Let me see your back. No, it's off. It's no light, no nothing. It's like broke. Nope, went back off. Pause.
What happens?
Yes. Oh, technology.
A little bit.
Low battery. Speak.
Can you hear me now?
He'll tell us in a second. It says it's on and fine.
Okay.
Put this on the table next to you. Let's see if we do better.
The battery's on now.
Okay.
Sure.
So where were we?
We're talking about why I decided to go to the military. My mom's very strict.
Okay, so your dad has said you can go to the Air Force,
The Navy, or the Coast Guard.
Okay.
And I scored high enough on the ASVAB to go anywhere I wanted to go. So I decided to go to the Air Force.
Do you remember your score?
No, I don't. But it was high enough to go to any branch. So yeah.
Back then, did they tell you what jobs you qualified for, or?
Yes, I remember I took the test, and it's so funny because I've always been told that I cannot do a job where everything has to be mechanical or like assembly work or things like that. That's just not that's not in my makeup. So I think that's why I chose. And actually, I didn't choose my job; they chose me.
Okay.
So that's why I was a 276, and that's what I went for.
Okay, please explain what a 276 is.
A 276 is an aerospace control warning systems operator, also known as a scope dope.
A scope dope.
That's what they would call us. So how I explain to civilians. My job was a combination of war games with Matthew Broderick and Top Gun, because I worked with weapons controllers. And I worked with NORAD and protecting our airspace. Anything that we seen that did not look like it belonged, then we would scramble on it.
Okay. So let's go back.
Okay.
We'll get into your job and how you got there. So we went to stay at Grandma's house because Mom was too much.
Yes.
And we left from Grandma's house. And where did they send you to AIT? I'm sorry, to basic.
I went to basic at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas.
Okay. And do you remember anything about basic training?
I remember everything about basic training. The night I had landed at Lackland, there was a lot of fog and stuff, so it took a long time for us to land. So they served a lot of drinks on the plane. So most of us were drunk when we landed. So we got to Lackland about midnight, and they let us go to Midnight Chow. They wanted to make sure they fed us. And I remember seeing some type of bug. I don't know what it was. I just know it was huge. I'm like, oh my God, what is that? And someone said to me, everything's bigger in Texas. I says, okay, I see. So the next day, they kind of let us adjust our sleep. So they woke us up, and
they let you sleep?
Yeah, they didn't wake us up in that normal, like at 5 in the morning. I think they let us sleep to about 8 or 9. Yeah.
The Air Force is so nice.
So we got up, and they got us in formation. So there, you're a rainbow, because everybody has their different clothes on, and we're rainbows, and they've got to take us and then process us. And I was just really amazed at the efficiency. It's like these groups of people, move them through. The people that issue your uniforms, you can tell they've been doing it a while. They could look at you and tell pretty much what size you wore and this and that and the other. And this was just really, you're just shell-shocked, like what is going on here? And I remember the young men that they had to get their hair cut. And them barbers, they don't play, like about 4 swipes next, and the inoculations. And yeah, I just remember a lot of things about basic. And growing up with a military mother, I mean, she wasn't in the military, but she might as well have been. Basic was not a big adjustment for me because I was used to rules and regulations, and this is what we do. In my household, everybody was up by 9, chores done, breakfast eaten, get on with your day. That was my life for 18 years, so basic training was not a stretch for me at all. Yeah. And I became I was a dorm chief. So my leadership skills started very early in basic. So here I am, 18 years old, and I'm in charge of a flight. And a lot of times with the military, especially in the Air Force, the reserves and the guards, they go through basic with us. So I've got grown women in here that are 35 and 36 years old, and I'm telling them what to do. And so that was interesting.
How many people are in a flight?
There's 50 in a flight.
Okay.
So you have 50 girls in a flight, and there's usually 4 flights to a dorm. So 200. So 5 o'clock in the morning, everybody's scrambling downstairs because you got 5 minutes to be in formation. And I learned how to sleep at attention. I learned how to do a night display. I learned how to brush my teeth in the shower because these are things that you do. And and being an only child, there was a lot of adjustment because I'm used to my own room and my own everything, and now I'm in the shower bay where there's just shower heads and everything's on display for everybody. So that was an adjustment.
What's a night display?
How you display your fatigues. So there's a way that you display your uniform at night. So your pants are draped over the top of the chair, and then your fatigue top is put over top of that. I slept in my socks, but usually your socks should be tucked in under your hat, and your hat goes on the seat of your chair. And then your shoes go underneath. So when you get up in the morning, you learn how to slide up out of bed, tuck your bed under, put your clothes on. So you put your pants on, and your shirt, and your hat, and your shoes. Tie your shoes, but as you're going downstairs, you're zipping up your pants, tucking in your shirt, doing all that. Yeah. And it's so funny because, the training that I got through the military to this day, I still do it. I still make military corners. I still fold my towels and everything the same way. And my husband teases me because I'm very anal about that. It's like, don't fold the towels because you do it wrong. So, yeah, so the military, that training stays with you. I remember having to iron my pantyhose because they had to be in my security drawer because that was inspected, and not to have hairs in your razor and all these different things, yeah. So trying to live with 49 other women was interesting as well, because I'm just like, and I'm a dorm chief. So they're waking me up at night because they miss their boyfriends and they're crying and all this. And I'm just like, I'm not ready for all this. Go to sleep, you know. So, but it was a good time because it taught me what I was made of as a leader.
Did you guys have dorm beauticians?
No, we did not. And matter of fact, the African American young ladies learned for the 5 weeks I was in basic, because you wear fatigues until that last week, 6 weeks. But that last week, the first 5 weeks, you were in your fatigues the whole time. Your last week in basic training before you graduate, that's when you wear your dress blues. And they give you a little bit more time to get ready and things like that. But I wore 2 French braids the entire time. But that weekend before your last week that you go into town and you get your hair done, and yeah. So, you know, it was a source of pride to know that you made it through, and now that you can wear your dress blues. But you know what I think is so sad? Pretty much the same outfit that I wore when I was in, they're still wearing. It's like, the Air Force need to update their uniforms. That's what I envied about the Army, because the Army has a lot of different uniforms and this and that and the other. We need to update our uniforms. But, yeah, so you got those low quarters on and your pantyhose and everything, so yeah.
Okay, so you go to tech school after that?
Yes, Biloxi, Mississippi, that I had to get to by a bus. So I remember being on the bus, sleeping, waking up, where are we? Texas. Going back to sleep, waking up, where are we? Texas. It took about a day to get across Texas. How can I describe Biloxi, Mississippi?
Do you want to?
Hell. Yeah, hell. It was, where am I? You know, I remember when we landed there, it was the big hurricane that went through. I can't remember the hurricane's name. So the base was still trying to recover from that. I remember going, after I in-processed, I was walking like near the beach, seeing an alligator there, and it was just dead, just laying on the beach. I'm like, oh my God, where am I at? During the in-processing, they gave us 3 legal pad sheets, top, back and front and back, covered of places that we were not allowed to go as military. It was like stepping back in time. Honestly, it was like stepping back in time. And when I was there, they didn't like military people. And then you had the prejudices on top of that. So there wasn't a lot of places we could go. And that was my first experience with interracial prejudice. I had never experienced that before. So that's why I met my husband, and we got married. And I remember we went off base to this club one night, and I couldn't understand why people kept staring at us. And the young ladies kept saying, well, you're with that red bone. And I had no idea what that meant. And then the men were kind of like giving me a stink eye, like, well, why are you with that red bone? I'm thinking, I don't know what you people are talking about. But because my husband was fair-skinned, that was really a problem for them. So Biloxi, Mississippi, if I never go back there, I'm really okay, because that was like 4 months of hell. It really was. And I remember I got an offer after I straightened up and stopped partying and decided to take tech school seriously, because I almost got kicked out of tech school, because I was so busy having a good time, and I would stay out all night, come in, eat midnight chow, take a shower, go to class, and pass out. So they had to put me on bed report, or I wasn't going to pass. So after I straightened up and decided to take school seriously, and I rose to the top of my class, and they even asked me would I consider being a pipeline instructor, learning how to be an instructor. I'm like, not here, not in Biloxi, no. Now, I understand now with the casinos that are there now that it's changed a lot. But when I was there, they had one mall, and that was, yeah, it was very interesting.
Let's talk about the actual training that you received.
Okay.
How intense was it, and what was it like?
For tech school, I was learning to work on computers that would take up this entire room, the big tubes and everything like that. I remember the headsets we wore, they were like a half a telephone hanging off your head and everything like that. So in learning how to be a part of learning how to do radar and everything like that, you had to learn how to manually plot. So you had to learn how to write on a board and write backwards. And your instructors would have what they called the motivator. So they had these great big plastic bats. So when you were writing wrong, they would slam it up against, it would scare the bejesus out of you, but it was intense, but it's security, so it should be. So when you're learning about NORAD and DEFCON 1, 2, and 3 and what that means and things like that, that's serious. So yeah, I understood why they wanted me to either straighten up or get out, but I passed, I went through, and then at the time I was married, so they had to figure out where they were going to send us. And my husband was a computer repairman, so the types, he could work on these computers that we were operating. So there's only 2 bases in the world they could send us, Luke Air Force Base or the Philippines. So we went to Luke Air Force Base. That's where I spent my whole tour.
You get to Biloxi, what year is it?
1980.
Okay. And you meet your husband there?
I met my husband there.
So y'all jumped the broom rather quickly?
We knew each other 3 months before we got married. Yeah, recipe for disaster.
Why the rush?
Well, we'll probably come to that later on in the story because
okay.
I'm actually married now to my high school sweetheart, which whom I had broken up with before I went to the service. So I think it was kind of a rebound thing, like, you know, okay, I'm grown, I'm making my own money, I'll just do this, and yeah.
How was the money in the service then?
It wasn't bad. You know, I can't really tell you what I used to, but it was, you know, I was an airman. But, you know, at 19 years old, making your own money, not asking anybody for anything. And that's something that he's my ex-husband now, God rest his soul, he's deceased. He had to remind me of, because I know, like, dealing with young people now, sometimes I used to be like, I don't understand why they don't get that. And he had to remind me, he says, your experience at 19 was a whole lot different than their experience at 19. At 19 years old, I was a homeowner, I had a brand new car, and I'm paying for all this by myself. That's not the typical story of a 19-year-old now, you know, so that was an adjustment. The military will help you grow up, and I tell students all the time, two of the greatest accomplishments I think in my life that I've ever done, become a parent and go to the military. Because the military helped me find direction, it helped me to grow up, and it helped me to realize that there is more to this world than Xenia, Ohio. You know, so that's why it doesn't bother me to live in a small town now, because I've been places, I've traveled, I've done some things, and I can tell that my experiences and how I view the world and things like that is a lot different than some of my friends who never really left Xenia, Ohio. I live in a smaller place. I live in Wilberforce now, so I live in the township outside of Xenia, and but it's okay because, you know, we was in the military, and I never went overseas, but I did travel. TDY, been some places, done some things.
Had you worked on computers prior to?
No, this is all new. Had
Biloxi.
no idea whatsoever. And I remember when I first got to the 26th Air Division, because that's where I was at. I worked for Tactical Air Command. First of all, let me tell you my experience when I left Biloxi. So, Sky Harbor International Airport in Phoenix, Arizona, I landed at midnight. It was 99 degrees. I'm like, what the hell? I go from one hell to another, but it was so hot. So the next day, doing my in-processing, I'm new, I don't have a car, I don't have anything, so I have to walk everywhere. It's 115 degrees outside. And I'm just like, I just can't win. I go from one place to another. But learning to in-process in Arizona and getting acclimated and this and that and the other. So I was put on, there was 3 crews of us, and I was put on Bravo crew, one of the strictest crews there was. Yeah, so I had my first sergeant. We didn't get along too well. He was he was strict, but he was rude. And, you know, in the military, you can get away with things like that. Things that now that are like microaggressions and things like that, it's very much tolerated in the military. And even, you know, my time in the military, when you look at my record, I have a good record, this and that and the other. And my first sergeant told me straight out, he said, you know what? I would love to send you to officer candidate school if you learn to shut your damn mouth. So I always got 8s and 9s on my APRs, except in bearing behavior. I always got 5s and 6s because I challenged authority. Not that I wanted to supersede authority, but God gave me a brain to think and reason. And that's not always celebrated in the military. You know, one mind, one sound, and you know how they train us. And I'm just like, that doesn't make sense. And I remember we would have canteen duty, you'd have to clean up, police the area, this and that and the other. I had no problem doing that, but I did have a problem picking up cigarette butts and coffee because I didn't smoke and I didn't drink coffee, so I didn't feel that I should have to do that. So that was always causing problems and things like that. I would learn to be an irritant because some things I just wouldn't conform. And that wasn't always the best way to handle that, but you know, when you're 18 and 19 and 20, you think you're invincible. You can do these things and it's okay. Yeah. So looking back on that, I don't think I would have done anything too much differently, but I think I might have maybe toned my attitude down just a little bit. But you know, you meet people from all walks of life and different experiences and different things like that, and meeting these different people and their experiences and what they're going through and what they bring to the table, and it's a melting pot, and you have to learn quickly, you know, who you can trust, who's your friend, who's not, and yeah, different things like that.
Yeah. Okay. So meeting these people, do you stay in contact? Have you stayed in contact with any of these?
Not many. Yeah, over the years we've kind of lost contact. And I, you know, with Facebook and social media, I've even tried to maybe look at some of them to see if I could find them. But, you know, the fact that we're all women, a lot of us have different last names now and this and that and the other, and it's kind of hard. But I still do look, you know, because I would like to see some of them and see how they're doing and how they fared and different things like that. Yeah.
It was the 80s.
Yeah.
It was pretty.
Especially my roommate. Her name was Gloria, and she was very interesting. She was a wonderful young lady. She was half Japanese and half Mexican. Yeah, and we just clicked as roommates. And you know, she was married. She was a reservist, and she was married. And I think when she got the basic training, when we were at tech school, I think she started kind of questioning whether she should be married or not. And, you know, we had to have some long talks. It's like, this is not the time to make those decisions, and maybe you need to rethink some things. But, you know, that's what, you know, when you're young and you're making decisions, you don't realize maybe that's not the best. Because, like I said before, I married somebody I knew for 3 months. We stayed married for 6 years, had 3 children, but that was a lot of living in 6 years. We did a lot of living, so, yeah.
Okay. So out of tech school, you come out of tech school with high honors and a husband. They send you to Luke Air Force Base. You both arrive.
Yes. I got to the base first because his tech school was longer than mine. My tech school was 3 months. His was 8 months. Mm-hmm. So I was at Luke by myself for about 3 or 4 months. So it was my responsibility to set up housing and get a car and do all these things. So by the time he got there, I was pretty well established. I lived on base until he got there, and then we moved to an apartment off base. And then, let's see, we bought a house. And so we were living in a house. One of us got orders, I can't remember. So we thought we were going to leave, so we sold the house, and then they canceled the orders. But then we moved on base to base housing. So we lived in base housing in a house that was slated for someone who was a technical sergeant or above. We had a beautiful house on base. But you needed monthly inspections, weekly inspections with the yard and different things like that. And he went TDY a lot. So it was, that's what I was saying earlier, some military life, I'm hoping, I don't know, I hope there's more counseling and stuff in place that's now, because military life is hard, it's different, and I think it was harder for us because we were both enlisted. Remember, I told you he'd go TDY and he'd be gone 3 and 4 months at a time, and you'd come back and you know, I think your cape was flowing behind you, and dun 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 dun, back. I'm like, I've been handling this since you've been gone, so don't come here trying to tell me what to do. But it just caused a lot of problems, and our jobs are stressful. We worked different shifts. Working with him taught me one thing: I never ever want to work again. I don't want my husband to work the same place where I work. Don't want that to happen. We would get into it, and we'd argue all the way to that gate shack. But once we got through that gate shack, you go downstairs, I'll go upstairs, and we're gonna talk again. We can pick this up when we get back. But it was just a lot of stressors that I don't think helped. And we were married 6 years, and it just wasn't working. And my mother died in 1986. And by that time, my youngest son is the only one that I did not have on active duty. And my mom died, Rudy was a month old. So I moved back here I came back to Ohio for her funeral. And 25 years old, 3 children, I have an epiphany. My life has to be different. So I decided that I was going to change my life. And he went back because he was still active duty. I told my dad, I'm not going back. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need to change my life. So we had 1 suitcase. I had 3 children, 1 suitcase, no furniture, no nothing, but I started my life over. Yeah. My dad helped me, but I lived with my dad for a while, took the civil service test, passed that, so then I became a police dispatcher. So I did that for about 5 years. And I was single for a while, but then I reconnected with my beau from high school, who's had a crush on me since 7th grade. And we just reconnected. My middle son, who just recently passed, my middle son just died January 27th. And he was kind of on the spectrum. He had autism. But I remember the first time he met my husband now, he was nonverbal at the time. He would get up on his lap and look at him, then get down. He did that the whole night. I thought to myself, oh, well, he won't be back. But I think children know. And we decided we wanted to try and build a life together. So we lived together for 4 years, and then we got married. And so next month, we'll celebrate 30 years of marriage, but 34 years of being together. And we have no natural children together. He helped me raise my 3 boys, and the one that just passed was his favorite. And so, you know, I just feel blessed in that category, the fact that I was able to marry somebody who understood that I had these 3 boys that needed a father, and he helped me raise them. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You said a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you. Thank you.
Both losses, the loss of your mom and the loss of your son.
Thank you.
Third, you can't be telling folks dad's got favorites. Shh.
Yeah. Well, we tell our children, so all of you are my favorites, but
my favorite is the one I'm looking like and talking to at the moment.
Yeah. Michael had a special place in his heart, and it was okay. It needed to be, but.
Shh,
and that's when you
letting mommy and daddy's secrets out. You can't be doing that.
When you survive those things together, you know, it's like, wow, you know, but we're okay. You know, okay. It's out of the norm, because children should bury their parents, not parents bury their children. But we're okay.
Most definitely, okay. It is.
Our faith sustains us, and I miss Michael. But Michael's in a better place, and I know that, and I have comfort for that, so I'm good. And it's interesting, because I know people kind of look at me like, but I'm not going to go off rails. I'm not going to break down. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we went over a whole lot in those moments.
Yeah.
I want to just go all the way back and talk about those probably about 5.5 years that were at Luke Air Force Base, and some of those TDYs that you did. And so let's just talk about that military career.
Yeah. Tactical Air Command is very interesting because it's you're around a lot of brass. Okay, so that was the thing. It's kind of like, I was on night shifts for a while, and I liked that because I just didn't have to deal with this brass all day long. But, I eventually rotated, like I said, the Bravo crew. They worked days. The military, the Air Force, once you get out of basic training, to me, it's almost just like, it's no different than me working here at Wright State. You have a job, you have a shift, you go to work, you do your 8 hours or 12 hours, whatever shifts, and you come home. Sometimes I'd have weekend duty, and we'd have to do that, but it was just it was very regulatory. Sometimes it's short TDYs for training and things like that. I was never gone more than like 3 weeks on TDY. My ex-husband is the one that had the long TDYs, like 2, 3. I know he went to Fort Huachuca and he was gone almost 6 months. And, and that was like being a single parent. It's like, okay, I got to handle everything. And that can be stressful because, you live on base housing and you got inspections. I remember at one point, all 3 children had, no, 2. I had the 2 at the time. They both had the chicken pox. Michael had them in his mouth, and so they've got chicken pox, and I've got to get the yard cut. And I remember, I think I had a meltdown one day because there was a gopher in the yard. I caught a gopher, and I didn't know what to do with him, so I just put a bucket over him, and I was waiting for them to come and get him. And it's just like, yeah, I just can't handle this today. I just really cannot handle this. But you just get through. You got to do what you got to do and move on. But I remember it was just and then because of the nature of my job, when we would quote unquote play war games, when they would be playing with the weapons and the Top Gun and all that, there's more brass. So, everybody's just uptight because there's a lot of people around. You got to be on your P's and Q's, and it's just stressful. It's kind of like, golly, can I just breathe? But I enjoyed my job. I really did. And I tried to cross-train into becoming an air traffic controller, but because our career field stayed so short because it was a wartime skill, they would not let me out. So I was hot for a remote assignment. The first time I got orders to Thule, Greenland, and I was pregnant, so they couldn't send me then. So then after I had Brandon, that's my oldest, I think I got another remote assignment to Korea, and they just canceled those. I don't even know what happened with that. But that was my whole tour. I was worried about getting a remote assignment, and it was just stressful. It would be some difference if I was just by myself. But when you have children in the equation, it's like, I don't know if I want to take my, some tours you could take your family, but you run the risk then so first of all, they'll extend it. So instead of going a year, you're going to go for 18 months, and you could still go and come back and still be hit with a remote assignment. And the stress of that was just like, I need to get out. So, when you first go into the military, into the Air Force, you feel like what's called a dream sheet, all the places that you would like to go. So when you start getting shorter time, and whether it's going to re-enlist or whatever, they'll start sending you orders for your dreams. Well, I want to go to the Philippines. So I got those orders, and I turned them down. And then I got where I really wanted to go. I wanted to go to the Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado, because that's where NORAD is at and everything, and that's where I wanted to go. And I got those orders. I'm like, nope, I'm out. Because the military is also notorious for giving you orders, and once you re-enlist or extend your tour, they'll cancel them. Or I'm not even going to take that chance. So I went ahead and got out. But I never really got to go where I wanted to go. But I stayed in Arizona for the whole time. Arizona is beautiful. I loved it. I would live in Arizona if it wasn't for my husband. That's where I would be. But I just, I never got a chance to relax when I was in the military because I was always around brass and always having to just make sure everything was just so-and-so. So, yeah.
Was it your intent when you got married to have a large family, or?
No.
Okay.
It really wasn't. But I had 3 boys.
Okay.
And I was on my way to fielding a basketball team, so I'm like, I got to take care of this. But children in military, though as I said, Uncle Sam wanted you to have family, it is you one. And I really do believe that in a lot of ways, because there's just a lot of, extra stress that goes on with being in the military. For instance, as a woman who has a baby, when I was in 6 weeks, you're back to work. No ifs, no ands, no buts. And you're back to work in your uniform. My uniform was cutting a mess out of me, but I was in it. But it was just, that battle, like, okay, I got to go home. I got to get out of these pants before I pass out. But, and I just don't think, I know that they've done some changes now to be more accommodating, but the military just at that point wasn't very accommodating as far as a woman with a baby. And, I think I got the baby blues because I had to send my child to daycare and this and that and the other. I remember with Brandon had what's called the port wine stains on his bottom. So I'm at work one day and I get a call from the JAG, the Judge Advocate's office. They said they need to see me. I said, see me about what? They said allegations of child abuse. I said, I don't understand. So I had to go. And they said, because somebody at daycare had changed Brandon's diaper, seen the mark, and just immediately assumed that I was abusing him. So there was a lot of microaggressions and a lot of...
Was Brandon a red bone like his father?
Yes.
Okay.
So he had this bruise. It was a bruise, but it wasn't anything that I had done. It was like the combination of a port wine stain and a little bit of a discoloration. But instead of somebody, I understand. She did it for safety reasons, but imagine how that makes you feel, that someone thinks that there's a possibility that you're abusing your child.
My daughter had stork bites on her.
Brandon had those too on the back of his head. Yeah, he still has them.
On her eyelids or whatever, and so when she'd lie, they'd become flesh. Yeah. So you ain't telling the truth.
Yeah, built-in lie detector. How about that? Yeah,
right. But when she was a baby, it looked like I was putting makeup on her too.
Right.
So I understand. And I have another really light-skinned sister, and her bottom. We called them the green booties because she had the little same thing. So it's interesting being colored.
Yes, it is. It very is. And when you even talk about those things, about the microaggressions with racism and everything in the military, it was very real.
Was it the same? Was it less than in Mississippi than it was in Arizona?
I think it was more so in Mississippi from civilians.
Okay.
But in Arizona, there was a lot of misogyny and a lot of microaggressions being a black female in the military.
Were there a lot of females in your particular job?
No, there were 3 of us, and I was the only woman of color.
Were there a lot of men of color?
1.
So
the flight of, there's our crew consisted of 50 people. So you have 2 black men, 1 black woman. So that was interesting within itself. It's amazing to me when I look over my life. It's always been, wherever I've been, it's always been kind of like a social experiment about the things that you encounter and the things that you see and the things that you deal with. And I pray to God that in the military it's gotten better. But there was a lot of misogyny, a lot of microaggression when I was in the military. And that's probably another reason why I wanted to get out, because I just felt like I could not. What my first sergeant said to me about, he was very serious. And it's kind of like, well, why is it because I voice my opinion or I say what's on my mind? And I was always respectful. I never, I was never disrespectful because I wasn't raised that way. I mean, I was raised in a home where you said yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. To this day, you know, when I meet people, I always call them Miss or Mister because I was taught that you do not call anybody by their first name until you're invited to. So that's even been something that's been different for me, even being here at Wright State versus working at a private college, you know, those different things. But I just couldn't understand why I did not feel that I had the freedom to use the brain that God gave me to reason and state what I felt, that everybody just took that. It just seemed like it was always taken the wrong way, or it was taken like, well, I'm offended that you would say that. So, you know, being a woman in the military is, it's interesting.
I agree.
Yes, and depending on what career field that you're in, I'm sure that you experience some of the same things. It's kind of like, well, why can't I just be me? You know.
Absolutely. I'm sure people that purposely listen to interviews I've done are tired of me mentioning my first duty station and the racism and sexism that I endured from my platoon sergeant.
Absolutely.
I mean, he purposely would not issue me a toolbox.
Yeah.
And I used to run and hide from him in LMT tire wells until that scared 19-year-old, until that fear turned into anger, and then it became a different situation.
Absolutely.
But made me a stronger, better person, and I became a good leader behind it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So we grow and we learn.
We do.
Absolutely.
But it bothered me that it took a lot of anger that I had to learn how to grow, because I just, you know, at some point you start questioning who you are. I'm like, well, this is who God made me. What is it about me that seems to irritate people, especially white men? I just couldn't understand that, but it just seemed like that was my experience. And even when I became a police dispatcher, the same thing. It's kind of like, why is it everybody seems to have a problem with me? I just don't understand.
I don't think that we personally can answer for our history.
True, and that's what I've learned.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I've learned.
We can just be the best we's or
Right.
me's that we can be.
Right.
And continue to put positive vibes and smiles out in the world.
But I am thankful for, like I said, with the military.
Experience.
The military taught me how to grow up and how to become a leader. And my other experiences post-military taught me how to be unapologetic for who I am. Because, you know, one of my sayings, and people know, is that my somebodyness matters too. My somebodyness matters.
My somebodyness?
My somebodyness matters.
My somebodyness matters.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you mentioned, thank you for explaining, talking about your military, what you did when you were in Arizona.
Yeah.
So you went home for Mom's funeral.
Mm-hmm.
You told Dad, life changes today.
Yeah.
I got a suitcase and 3 boys.
It was an epiphany. It was an epiphany. Like, okay, so what are you going to do now?
And you took the civil servant test.
Yes.
You became a police dispatcher.
Mm-hmm.
You did that for 5 years.
Yes.
I'm quite sure that had some interesting days.
To say the least.
To say the least.
The police force it's a paramilitary unit. So you still deal with some of the same things. And unfortunately, this should not be this way, but I think that when people encounter you and you're different, you become their model of what they think someone of color should be or how they should act. So I was the 3rd African American woman that the Xenia Police Department ever hired. So that my 2 previous coworkers were quite different. The one was, you know, very, very sweet, very kind, didn't have, you know, a lot to say. Okay. The second one they hired, she was not as passive as the first one, but she was still passive. I'm not passive. I don't have to be. So I was like a shock to their system. And I was just from the standpoint, I don't know what you all are used to, but you're not going to talk to me that way. I don't have to take that. So that was the beginning of my relationship there. And it was a rocky 5 years. Rocky 5 years.
So why did you stay?
Because the money was good. I made really, really good money. And as a single mom, at the time I was single, I wanted to make sure that I could provide for my children. And probably I would still be there today, either there or died of a stress-related heart attack or stroke, because it was stressful. It really was. But I just think sometimes things need to happen, sometimes to make you move. Because I know for a fact if I would have stayed, I would not be doing what I'm doing now. I would not have been able, I don't think I would have gotten my education. I wouldn't have got it as soon, because every time I talked about trying to go to school, this and that and the other, there was always this roadblock. Well, we can't really make amends for you to do that, yada, yada, yada. So that's why I knew I wanted to go to school. So I left the police department, had a couple other jobs, and then I ended up going to, what did I do? I went to Wilberforce University. And so I worked at Wilberforce, and that's where I got my undergraduate at. So I worked there, and then I went to school and got my undergraduate in organizational communications. And after I got my bachelor's degree, I was praying and asking God, what should I do? And he says, you need to go to Payne. And Payne for what? What am I going to Payne for? Payne Theological Seminary. So I graduated in December. Wilberforce only has one graduation ceremony. So I was a December graduate. I wasn't going to walk till May, but I enrolled in Payne in January and started my quest of being in seminary. And I rationalized it. I said, okay, I can do that. I like talking to people. I'll go get a Master's of Divinity because I'll counsel pastors. That's what I want to do. And it wasn't until my second year in school I had to acknowledge the call in my life that I knew back when I was 12 years old, but then I had to finally acknowledge that I had been called into ministry, and that began that journey. So I have a Master's in Divinity. I am an ordained licensed minister, and I use my Master's of Divinity every day here at Wright State University. So my life has really become full circle. It's kind of like if you would have told me at 18 when I was joining the military that this was where I'd be now, I'm like, no, not me. That's not me. But I'm just thankful that God uses all types of people, even me.
Did you use your military benefits at all to help pay for your school?
No, that's just all on my own.
Could you have used your military benefits?
I didn't even really look into it the way that I should have. I just knew that I wanted to go to school. Yeah. So I know I didn't qualify for the regular GI Bill, but I just never really looked into it. It's just like,
I'm gonna make this happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I think because I felt like I had to wait so long to go to school, I just didn't want anything to stand in my way. I need to go to school. And because I knew that I felt like I was behind the times because all my friends had their education. I'm thinking, I'm 40 years old. I need to get my education. So I didn't want anything to stop me. So that's what I did.
Speaking on being a elder in the school community.
Yeah, that was interesting. I started out taking a class at lunchtime and a class after work. So I had needed 60 credits. So 47 credits from the community college of the Air Force transferred. So I had to go and make up the difference before I could enter into, I went to what's called CLIMB. It's an adult learning, fast pace to get your bachelor's degree. So, yeah, I was always the oldest one in school, this and that and the other, and I enjoyed it. I've always been comfortable in who I am, so it doesn't bother me that I was the oldest student there, this and that and the other. And then when I got into CLIMB, then I met more peers that were my age and this and that and the other. But it was a new experience. What I thought was so funny, I had one teacher, and I'm an employee at Wilberforce, and I came to class late one day, and she says, I need to see you after class. And she says, you may want to try and get a different class, but you can't come to my class late. I'm like, okay. Working here, I was working on a student, but okay. But I appreciated that, because now I teach UVC classes here, and that's some same things I tell my students. It's like, if you come in by the time I'm lecturing, you're late, don't bother. But you got to learn how to, if you hold those standards of excellence, people can get there, but you got to hold those, you operate in excellence, in all things excellence. So, yeah. So those kind of things rubbed off. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a student, it's a little scary to hear that. Like, some days it's just hard, but you're right. You're right. We got to get to class on time. Okay.
Well, students sometimes, it's just like, when I'm looking at millennials, and I tell them all the time, they are some of the brightest students around. They're bright. They got a lot of technology to do some things, but a lot of times they use a lot of excuses as to why they can't. And sometimes there's just no excuse. You're carrying around little mini computers in your pocket that you can use to do any and everything that you want. Our international students, they are amazing. They do everything by their phones, everything. So what is your excuse? Well, I didn't know. Why? We have an app. You can put an app on your phone. Everything, email, everything can come to your phone. So why would you not know? And I think a lot of the hard, fast rules that I try and live by, that's military training. It's military training. Yeah. So there's never a day in my life that somehow, some way does not revert back to the 4 years that I spent in the United States Air Force. And that will probably be that way until I die. Yeah.
Okay. What do you do here at Wright State?
I am a student success coach now. I've been that since November. I've been at Wright State about 10 years. I came here as a classroom scheduler, and it took me, I had applied for several jobs here at Wright State on and off until for about 4 years before I finally got someone who thought maybe I had some skills that could be used here. And I remember the day that I came for my interview, my father had just died. And my father was my rock. I'm a daddy's girl. He was my rock. And I had planned his funeral that day. And I was just all discombobulated and, just everything. So my interview was at 3. And I pulled into the parking lot at 5 minutes to 3. And I'm crying, I'm hysterical, this and that and the other. So I called the office and I spoke to who was going to interview me. And I was like, listen, I said, I've been at this long enough to know that if I'm just coming here on time, I'm actually late. And I'm sorry, but this is what's been happening. And I told her what was going on. And I said, if you don't want to interview me, I understand. I appreciate the opportunity. And she paused, and she says, I think we still want to see you. So I got off the phone, blew my nose, put on my jacket, dried my eyes, came in here with my A game, and got a job. And I started here in 2009, and I was a classroom scheduler for about a year. Yeah. And our Raider Connect wasn't even on my radar. But the person that was the head of Raider Connect at that time had come to me like the last day and asked me, because why have you not applied for Raider Connect? I'm like, I don't know. He said, please apply. So I applied, interviewed, and got hired. So I'm one of the OGs, one of the original gangsters from Raider Connect. They hired 12 of us. And I stayed at Raider Connect up until November. And then I became a student success coach. And that's what I do now. My focus, I've been in higher ed now, 22 years? I love students. My focus is students. I feel very blessed because I don't work a day in my life because I love what I do. I love what I do. So doing that and translating and trying to help students realize their potential and helping them navigate financial aid and holding that standard of excellence. It's like, you can do this, but you got to put some work in. And so I get great satisfaction about what I do, and I feel very blessed, because very few people can say that they really love what they do, but I love what I do. I love what I do.
I love this too.
Yeah.
This is the best. Sad I won't be able to do it anymore. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I'm thrilled that you love what you do. Anything else you'd like to tell me about you?
I don't know. I just feel like I've lived a very blessed life, and I don't take that for granted. I really don't. You know, sometimes I get in my job, I get to encounter a lot of people, parents, students, what have you, and I just try to, two things I always try to leave students with. Joseph Campbell was somebody that I studied when I was in seminary. And Joseph Campbell was a mystic and a seer. And he was somebody that George Lucas based a lot of teachings of Joseph Campbell is what George Lucas used for his ideas for Star Wars. And it talks about the departure of the human soul and things like that. And one of the things that Joseph Campbell says is, when you follow your bliss, doors will open where you wouldn't even see doors. And I tell students that. I said, and do what you love. If you do what you love, money will come. But if you do something strictly for money, you're going to be miserable. So follow your passion. Do what you're good at. I mean, I'm not a millionaire, but I make good money at what I do, and I love what I do. So I get up every day and I'm excited to come to work because I do what I love. And I think if you follow those two things, you'll get a lot more joy out of life. I worry about students these days. They're so stressed. I mean, they're so stressed. And I'm thinking, was I that stressed when I was 19 and 20?
Sounds like you were, according to our interview.
Maybe it was a different kind, but I mean,
it was a different kind of stress.
Yeah, but I was a parent at 19. So,
That's
but
true.
You know, these students, I mean, they're going to school, and I realize that those things are anything's stressful to you when you don't know how you're going to handle it. But it's like, you know, sometimes I talk to students, they're just breaking down, like, why are you so upset? This class and this and that and the other, and I just, I worry about students' mental health and things like that, because it's just stressful being a student now. But you got a lot of students that are trying to work full time and go to school full time, and I just feel for them. And I'm thinking, if you're this stressed now, what are you going to do when you're responsible for another human being, and you've got to make sure there's a roof over somebody's head, and you've got to make sure that all these things that a little person needs, so those kinds of things. And that's where I think, to me, the military helped me learn how to cope and do those things. And these days you see a lot of students that, when I was in school, because I was ancient, but, we had to take home ec, we had to take shop, we had to take personal finance and things like that. They're not teaching these things in school anymore. And it's showing up that a lot of things that what we would kind of consider kind of like basic things or common sense things, that some of these things are lacking, and it's really hard for some of these students to even just really cope. And that's kind of scary. It's kind of scary. But tell students sometimes now, even if you don't know what you want to do, maybe go to the military. The military has a lot of benefits. You asked me earlier, did I use my benefits? But my son, who was in the Army, did. And when he was in school, he was busy having fun. You're supposed to have fun, chasing girls, doing whatever. And then he decided to go to the military. And the military paid every bit of that $77,000 in student loans that he had. So I tell students, don't sleep on that. They will help you get your education. But yeah.
Did you happen to use your benefits for buying a home?
Yes, I did use that, yes. Okay. And I still have that. When I sold the home, I got that back. But I didn't have to use that for the home I live in. I've lived in for the past 20-something years, because I actually live in the home that my husband was raised in. So, yeah, we have that kind of thing. He never left home, so we're living in the house he was raised in.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Are you a member of any veterans organizations?
I'm a member of the Women's Veterans Organization. I don't go to a lot of the meetings or things like that, but I am a member. I'm trying to get around to that. I got a lot going on. But that's about it. I keep saying that I want to get more involved in some things, but I got a lot on my plate.
The Miami Valley?
Yes.
Cheryl Malone's?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I knew you from somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew you from somewhere. All right. Fantastic. So there's some other questions here, but I feel like we've completely covered them.
Okay.
So I just have one other question, well, two. One more again. Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed that you'd like for us to discuss?
No, I don't think so. Okay. I did find my birth family. Did I tell you that?
Oh, yeah, you had mentioned it, but we didn't cover it.
Yeah.
So what made you want to find your birth family?
I think when you grow up and you see your friends and your siblings, and they have siblings, my husband and his brother, a lot of people get them mixed up. They almost look like twins, and I never really looked like anybody. So that kind of you wonder who are you? Where do you come from? And as long as my adopted mother was alive, she just couldn't handle me talking about this. And I tried to reassure her it's not personal, but I just need to know. So I never pursued it while she was living. So after she passed, I was at work one day at the police department. I was bored. It was a Saturday. We were not doing anything. And I'd ordered my birth certificate because when you're adopted, the birth certificate that you have, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, there's an A up at the top that tells you that you're adopted. And the records in Ohio used to be sealed, and they unsealed them. So I ordered my birth certificate, and it had my information on it. My name was Teresa Logan. Thank God they changed my name. But I was named after my birth mother, but I don't look like a Teresa, So I opened the Springfield phone book to the Logans and just basically picked one. And the person that I called was my mother's ex-husband. That's nothing but God. So I had to have this conversation with him like, hey, how you doing? My name is this, and I know this is weird, but I believe that my last name is Logan. I was adopted, and I'm looking for my family. And he paused. I said to myself, he probably thinks I'm a crackpot. And he says, well, and he explained to me that he knew my mother, and he actually gave me the number to my grandmother. So it took me 2 phone calls to find my family. So I am one of 6. My oldest brother is dead, so now I'm the oldest. And I have 3 other brothers and a sister. The brother that's right under me, now this is wild, my baby boy's name is Adrian. I always knew I wanted to name a child Adrian. I didn't know why. And I said, so after I was pregnant with him, I said, whatever this child is, the first name's going to be Adrian. So I named Rudy Adrian Christopher. When I found my birth family, my brother's name is Adrian. So I thought that was kind of wild. So Adrian Lamont, and he is a major in the Wisconsin State Troopers Association. And then I have a brother in New York. His name is Keith. Then I have a sister named Anya, and she's in Las Vegas. So yeah, 2 phone calls to find my family. And I did that when I was 28. So I've known for the past 30 years. But what's wild is my siblings went to Springfield schools, Springfield City Schools, Springfield South they went to, and Springfield North and South at the time. When I was in school, it was North and South. It's just now Springfield. But we were big rivals in sports. Probably ran near them, some didn't even know, because both of my brothers played sports. And yeah. But it's interesting because I remember, my husband is a DJ, And I remember one day we did a party in Springfield. We did a retirement party, and I didn't know this woman. And she says, "You're a Logan, aren't you?" And it just kind of took me back. That's the first time her seeing me, so she knew. So I have a lot of family in Springfield, Ohio. And I lived in Xenia, Ohio, so like 22 miles is what's separated me from a lot of my relatives all my life.
Have you all got together at some point, or have you met them in person?
Yes, my mom, I met my birth mom that first year. She's deceased now. I think that, I think when you're a kid, I think I'm very naive in a lot of ways. I always want this Norman Rockwell picture of life and everybody's happy and this and that and the other. That isn't how life turns out. I think for me, I think I reminded my mother of a lot of things that were painful. So I didn't really forge a relationship with her. Matter of fact, the only one that I really talk to and have a relationship with is the brother that's right under me, Monty. We talk on a regular basis, but other than that, no. Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
I just think you learn to live with it. I think it's made me appreciate my children a lot more and to know that they're loved or whatever. I mean, you know, I never wanted anything from them. I just wanted to know who you were, but I just think that was just hard for her. And so it is what it is. You know, I ask myself sometimes, if I had it to do all over again, would I have done it? And probably the answer would be no. I think some things are better left the way they are. Yeah.
You didn't mention your birth dad.
I met him, and we tried to forge a relationship. That didn't go well either. I remember him asking me, "Well, can you call me Dad? Well, you're not my dad. I know I respect you. You're responsible for giving me life, but you're not my dad." Because I was very close to my dad, and he has since passed. But you know, this is interesting. You find two people who are your parents, and they both pass, and you're not mentioned in either obituary. Yeah.
Did you go to their funerals?
No, my mother actually died in Wisconsin. She was with my brother when she died. And I happened to come across my birth father's obituary, so no. So sometimes I think you gotta close chapters in your life and move on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it is what it is.
And you had two amazing parents.
I did. I did. And like I said, I was a daddy's girl, and he was my rock. And I can just now talk about my dad and not cry, because I just could not imagine being on earth and not, I talk to my dad every day. Every day I talk to him. I've seen him most days. Now sometimes he would do things and he'd make me kind of mad, and it's kind of like, "Okay, Daddy, I'll talk to you later." And we not talk to him for a day, but we were very, very close. And a lot of his wisdom and a lot of his guidance he gave me, and I'll always be appreciative of that. But so I was blessed in that way. Not saying that we didn't have issues, because all people do, but yeah, they were amazing parents. Yeah.
Good. You ended up where you were supposed to be.
Exactly. And the one regret, he knew I was in seminary, and he died before I could graduate. But one of the things was he was supposed to robe me, and he was going to buy my robe, but he didn't get a chance to do that. But I know he knows that I made it, and so we're okay.
We are okay.
We are. We're fine. We're fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Last question?
Yes.
Okay. What message would you like to leave for future generations who will hear or view this interview?
I still think that the United States is one of the greatest countries that we have. And bad knees and all, if they called me today, I'd go back without hesitation. And the democracy, it must be defended. It must be defended, okay? yes, there were problems with racism, this and that and the other. Doesn't matter. We still need to defend this country. There are some things that I don't agree with and some things, but it's still, once again, it comes down to defending where we live. I'm very pro-military. There's a lot of benefits for the military, and like I said before, it taught a girl from a small town to learn to stand on her own 2 feet and not be afraid to be a leader, not be afraid to step out and try new things, and realizing that there's a whole world out here. And for that, I am very thankful. And everything that I've become and everything that I do, it all comes back to my training in the military. It taught me how to be a leader. I've been pretty much a leader ever since I've been out of the military. So to be 18 years old from a small town and not understanding this and that and the other from, I remember getting teased when I was in basic training. We were from Mayberry or RFD, I said, probably. But, to become a leader and to do those things and to learn how to lead with excellence and to expect excellence in others. I tell students all the time, I'll always speak to the king and queen in you, always. Because you can get there, but you got to raise the bar. But that comes from the military. For that, I will always be grateful. I don't regret a day that I served. Not one day. Not one day. Thank you.
Okay. That concludes our interview with Michelle Dixon. Thank you so much for your time today and for your military service.
It was an honor.